As I Am was now removed mentally from the world, which she knew while she was awake, the magic had also separated her from all of the restrictions of time. She was carried back deep within her dream state to a place before knowledge, when love was the one and only single driving force which had ever existed, where love was her only true and actual form with being. The place where the godfish's love was both in excellence and intelligence all together and at the same time. As she slipped back towards this place, she became one with all of the joyful and painful experiences of what then seemed to her as a past life. All of those experiences which had made her who and what she had become, for she knew in the ending of that first moment that she had loved herself, and to her, love was everything, and so then, by the laws of nature, so then was she a part of this everything, and therefore not truly separated from or by anything. She began to recognize a small tingling in the center of her belly. Slowly but surely, she lost complete awareness and the relation to any self which she had ever known. I Am's only awareness and identification with anything was that she was this minor tingling, and it slowly kept growing. This tingling then grew into a sense, which was recognized as a vibration. This vibration transformed itself into a small fluctuation. It seemed to move up and down, up and down, up and down. Although it was still growing, the vibration then began to shift itself through a slow and dulling process to become more of a throb. Then it suddenly metamorphosized itself into what became an audible sound. A sound something like that of the lulled but steady pounding beat on an extremely small bass drum. Then it came to her that her whole being felt like it resonated with this beat as the feeling of it continued to intensify. She eventually became aware only of this. The small vibration had seemingly vanished as it had traded places with this beat. Anything that remained in the way of an identification which she had had with ever being a fish, it became completely awash and had wiped itself away from her conscious mind. And this had to take place before she could fall completely under the magic spell. I Am's truth had become that this tingling vibration which had become this fluctuating beat, then and there became the only thing which she could ever remember. This beat that she had become after a minute's time, which had seemed like an eternity, it became slightly distracted. Now this pure and unadulterated beat became aware that there seemed to be this other thing, which was something other than itself. Although the awareness of this otherness was slight at first, and almost barely recognizable, this now conscious beat was somewhat sure that it was there. Another minute later, that awareness which was sure that it was only a beat could now realize that this thing, which it had become aware of, was indeed there. And not only that, but it was growing as well. As it grew, it seemed as though this new thing had the faintest of sounds. However, it seemed to be on another level, other than the beating it knew before as itself. It felt almost like the sound which was produced by blowing on a dog's whistle. Not having anything in the way of memorable knowledge to compare itself to, it could not at first distinguish what it was that it was becoming aware of. As this thing grew, it seemed to become a very soft, swirling, sucking sound, like that of an occasional breeze, coming from some sort of an airbound vortex or something of the like. Still it grew, now becoming more noticeable. It was formulating some kind of definite pattern. This beat then recognized that this too was some sort of fluctuating item, and yet it seemed different somehow from the first recognition of itself. The beat struggled to recognize this difference, then it found it. It was moving in and out, in and out, in and out. After a minute of following this pattern, the beat suddenly recognized something else. After this sound, which was only minutes ago seemingly separated from itself, was now recognized by itself as coming from itself. This beat, it was breathing. Then all of a sudden, this beat realized that even though it knew itself as one entity, it now somehow recognized itself as two separate entities as well. As this beat and a breath were now considering itself within this split personality, which it had become, It felt as something very strange which it had not previously known. And once again, although it had no knowledge of this something which it had now become aware of, it was quite sure that it existed. This solitary beat and breath could not of itself decided if this was a good thing or a bad thing which it was recognizing, for the thing which it had recognized in that fleeting moment was what has become known as a feeling. Right then, seemingly like a ton of bricks have hit it, it somehow just knew through what just before was an unfathomable amount of growing cells that it was beating and breathing through space. It was as if it were a cosmic puddle consisting of an infinite amount of shades of gray. It was a brain of itself. It then became aware that it was aware, and that this brain was what had made this so. And from that awareness was this feeling then recognized, this new and growing entity recognized that although there was seemingly a division in and of itself, a multiplying of the one, it realized that this awareness which it had experienced was coming neither from the beat or the breath, and now, in and of itself, there were three, and right then and there, the grand illusion of separation had begun. It was at this point in time that this Trinity's entity had forgotten the process through from which, where, and when it had become. Its entirety became familiar with the delusion of separation as it forgot who it was, which it had always been, who it would forever be, who it was destined to be. It was in this instant that this being began a slow swirling in and of itself, and it became a vortex of forgetfulness of what it was, that it had just come through and gone through. Then it began to shrink. It reduced itself into the intelligence of a single cell, knowing itself only as the essence of love, and then that too it forgot. Simple was worried about his wife. He cherished her even above the king himself, although he would never dare admit this to any soul alive in the underwater world, not even to I Am herself. For he saw his mate as his adored queen, and often when calling her he would say,
"Hey, my beloved queen, look at this." Or, "Where are you, my sweet and loving queen?"
In actuality, he had made up a number of these catchphrases, all using the word queen placed in them somewhere. He had personally created each of these sayings just for the sake of her. He liked to use those catchphrases for hooking his favored wife away from whatever it was which he might otherwise be engaged with. The king had just left the room a couple of minutes ago, and Simple had become fearful for his wife's safety. She hadn't moved for what seemed like an eternity to him, even though in reality it had only been 5 minutes. Simple could no longer contain himself without knowing for sure that his wife would be okay. He swam slowly over beside the table and came parallel to his sleeping wife. He then placed his fin carefully and with softness upon her swollen belly.
"I am, my queen of queens and heart of hearts. Please be okay."
I Am stirred on the table for the first time in 5 minutes, and slowly she began to wake up. Simple could tell from the vibrations in the water that someone was outside, somewhere around the corner, and that this someone was heading for the door. With quickness, Simple swam back to where he was waiting, before the king had left the room. The king stopped as he was arriving at the open door. Neptune entered the room. Simple tried to look innocent, but he was so very lousy at lying that the truth was there, alive and in his eyes, and there was guilt written all over his face, too. The king, now being fully recovered from his meal, laughed with all of his belly's muscles. His laughter was so contagious that it woke up I Am completely. When she saw the look on Simple's face, she burst out into laughter too. Even Simple, as humbled as he was, had joined in on the laughter as well, except that his laughter, it was directed only at himself. His laughter had washed away all of his previous guilt, because after all, the actions he had just performed had all been done in the name of love. The king, slowing his laugh, then said,
"Don't worry, Simple. You could not have touched her until the magic was complete. That part I had considered, for I knew that you would become beyond the average warrior and reach the point of uncontrollable concern for your dear wife I Am. Therefore I mixed in an observer's inhibitor ingredient as part of the spell's magic. This part of the spell's medicine works to keep even the strongest observer away just long enough for the magic to take its effect. You would have been powerless against this magic to do anything in regards to her, not even for a second before the spell had finished its work.
I Am then said,
I feel so strange. I'm feeling curiously joyful deep inside. It is as if 1,000 angelfish's babies were spinning around somewhere within my belly.
She then looked towards Simple. She was feeling a little concerned. Was that what he had thought? Or maybe it was a look of being puzzled. And this was when she had said,
It is the most curious thing. I know I was dreaming just a few minutes ago, and that the dream was deeply moving and seemingly insightful too. But to tell the two of you the truth, I have completely forgotten its entire content and any of the meanings which were behind it.
The king smiled and said to I Am,
Dear I Am, now that the power of the spell has taken its grip, it is high time that I explain to you why you have come so that this can become the end-all to both of your curiosities. The reason you can't remember your dream, I Am, is because the deep wisdom within the magic, it was not meant only for you, it was meant for one of your babies, which you are now carrying around in one very special egg. Part of this magic ensures that against all odds, through many of your children must die, becoming food for both my royal subjects in the underwater world and the humans up in the heavens above water. This one special son who you will be having, he will be saved through this magic spell, and it is he who will eventually become the most special and most powerful and the most purposeful fish in all of our 7 seas. His importance in the ocean's big picture will become elevated above any of my other beloved subjects, and his nature will become known by all of the ocean's inhabitants. But I beg of you both, you must never tell any other fish of the exact nature of this gift or of this event, for none but ourselves were ever meant to know this information, this priceless miracle and gift. It was meant only for the 2 of you and the 2 of you alone. Is this understood?
Within a look of deep pride, gratitude, and amazement, they both lovingly and assuredly agreed. The king then pulled a cord which hung from the ceiling in the corner beside his desk. He had called for his ambassador, Michael Meanswell, and upon his momentary arrival, the king said,
Call now for the royal seahorses to carry our honored subjects back to their cave.